First of all, thank you, Asma Jahangir Conference, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to be on such a great panel. It's been amazing 2 days. Just coming back to your questions, Ahid, then after that, I'd like to add a few comments to the other comments which had been made before. Um, on Pakistani government stance, why are they reacting the way they have reacted? We have in the past accepted a large number of refugees, officially, unofficially. Some say we did look after them well. Some others have a different position on that. There's been some successes and some failures. What is driving this closure of border? That is the kind of lead topic of this panel. I think there are two elements that I see very clearly. One is driven from a very high level, state policy making level, where you look at the geopolitics of what's happened in Afghanistan. Pakistani government feels that the last 20 years there was an international military and government building attempt in Afghanistan. They agreed with parts of it. They did not agree with parts of it. Pakistan government was also seen to be almost one of the only countries in the world which consistently supported the Taliban's inclusion in some form of a political setup. They feel that now, as the change has happened in August 15, the Taliban have taken over, and the international community, and especially the US and other NATO-aligned countries, would like to step away from that and say, well, now the Taliban have taken over. These are actors that we don't support. They are on sanction lists. And there will be no support, and they will not recognize the Taliban government, which looks quite plausible right now. And there will be no support given to Afghans and a Taliban-led Afghanistan, which is going to create a huge problem for Pakistan, including some of the other neighboring countries. So by closing the border, by having a very strong policy on Afghanistan, it's an attempt by the Pakistani government to push the international community to provide one way or the other, provide not just humanitarian support, but actually full development support to the Afghan government. As you all may know, that 95% or 97% of the budget of the Afghan government came from international sources. So it's a very common view in the Pakistani policymakers. The other element related to this that has defined Pakistan's closure of the border and not really acknowledging the number of people moving in or trying to have a clear policy is that they feel that they are afraid that things are going to get much worse in Afghanistan. It's a very clearly articulated fear that we hear constantly when you talk to the policymakers. They are seriously worried that, of course, the Taliban are not be able to deal with the humanitarian situation unfolding, but also there might be some legitimacy issues internally. We can see a reversal to conflict, and that the situation is going to escalate in Afghanistan. And if they provide a clear refugee policy, if there is a view in Afghanistan, at least in the Afghan people, that Pakistan can be a safe haven, there will be a faster influx inside of refugees. And they want to prevent both by having a very, very hard position. But saying that, and my other colleagues here have spoken in really great detail on the border closure situation. But the reality, I'm just coming from Balochistan 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, had a long kind of a stay there to look at the same situation. The reality is very different. There are more, just in Balochistan, our civil society partners reported there are more than 70,000 people, Afghans, that have come in post August 15. There are right now 92 different points on the border just in Balochistan where reportedly people cross in through human smugglers with support of all kinds of illicit human actors. What the government, while all this is going on, the government has a very, very harsh stance on the refugees within these, both Balochistan and also in KP, less in KP. We are hearing less in KP, but more in Balochistan. There is very little tolerance. Civil society actors who do support refugees and are working with them are being picked up. There have been instances where they were picked up, especially with the Hazaras, and questioned and intimidated by government actors on supporting to the refugees. This is causing huge amount of issues, not just for the refugees themselves or the migrants themselves, the Afghan migrants, especially women and children and other vulnerable groups, but also for the host communities. The host communities, in often cases, are themselves older refugees and migrants. They are already very vulnerable. They live in almost ghetto-like situation on the peripheries of the cities. Their resources are depleted. And also this pushes when there is, and we also know from the context of violent extremism, radicalization, that we've talked extensively on rights, on challenges to human rights coming from these extremist elements and militant organizations, which we've heard extensively last 2 days in this very great conference. Organized actors, whenever the government leaves that space in the society, in vulnerable, especially with vulnerable communities, every time the government steps away, where we see it stepping away, where it is not acknowledging a problem and it acknowledging an issue under its nose, these areas are always, these spaces are always filled in by non-state actors, which causes huge amount of destabilization and stabilization challenges, not just for the Afghans or the refugees or the migrants, but also Pakistani host communities. It strengthens those elements, it strengthens the play, and that space is being filled up. My personal feel is they will not be able to continue hiding your head in the sand with this issue. It's a reality. I know they've closed the border, they're hardening the border, they've hardened the border, but sooner or later they will need to come out with a very clear policy. Right now, they're not even allowing international organizations like UNHCR and others working on the ground to call them Afghan refugees or Afghan migrants. The term that's allowed to be used is called new arrivals. So this kind of ambiguity is injurious not just to the rights of the migrants and the refugees, but also to Pakistan's own challenges that it faces on these two border areas, which are already vulnerable, where there is huge high risk of all kinds of conflict drivers. So my own, kind of two bits, especially a request to our government at this point is to have a clear policy, to have a clarity on this issue. We will not be able to, we will have to continue to deal with what happens in Afghanistan onwards. It's not an event. We cannot take what happened on 15th of August as an event and kind of say, oh, we are dealing with the situation. This situation is yet unfolding, and it is going to have huge impacts, as it has had in the past, on Pakistan itself, on peace and security in Pakistan itself. So I think the clearer we are on whatever strategies and policies we come up, and the government needs to step in and take that space before others take that space for us. Thank you.